She was a young teacher, admired by her pupils and respected by her community. By day she shaped minds. By night she dreamed of a brighter future for her family. But on a chilly January morning she vanished without a trace. 3 days later, her lifeless body was discovered buried behind a centuries-old temple she often visited for peace. What hidden ties bound her to a former student? And how did trust, obsession and betrayal weave together into this shocking tragedy? Welcome back to Unraveling Crimes, the channel where hidden truths are exposed and real-life mysteries are told like gripping stories. If you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because today's case will make you question everything you thought you knew about safety, trust and justice in small-town India. Before we unfold the events of that January morning, let's step inside the lives of the people at the heart of this story. To understand what happened on the Temple Hill, we must first understand them. First, there is Meera Reddy, just 28 years old, a guest lecturer at Sunshine Academy in the quiet town of Sevalur, deep in the state of Kanpur Pradesh. She was more than a teacher. She was a guide, a sister, a confidant. Her colleagues remember how she stayed late to tutor struggling students, her gentle voice filling the empty classrooms long after sunset. At home, she was a young wife and mother, raising a baby barely a year old. Her friends describe her as warm-hearted and quietly ambitious, determined to build a secure future for her family. The temple on the hill was her sanctuary, a place where she found calm after hectic days of teaching. Her husband, Arjun Reddy, 32, worked in another city, a software technician, supportive but always on the road, sending money home, promising Meera that soon they would settle together. Their phone calls were full of plans for the future. A new apartment, a better school for their child, dreams interrupted by distance. Then there is Rohan Das, 20 years old, a bright but intense former student from Meera's evening coaching class. In the corridors of Sunshine Academy, he was known for his charm and ambition. But behind the easy smile was a young man whose admiration for his teacher had begun to cross invisible boundaries. Even after leaving her class, he kept reaching out. Phone calls, messages, unplanned visits. Some whispered in the town about an attachment growing too deep. Meera, polite but firm, tried to keep her distance without sparking gossip. But in small towns, rumors have a way of spreading faster than truth. Around them were others whose lives would be shaken by what was coming. Meera's aging parents, especially her father Venkatesh, who had always seen his daughter as a pillar of strength. Her colleagues, who began to notice tension they couldn't quite name. And Inspector Savir Khan, the local police officer known for patience and persistence, who would later piece together the threads of this mystery. All of them, family, colleagues, neighbors, played their part in the world Veera moved through, unaware that it was about to collapse. These are the faces behind the headlines. Teacher, husband, student, parents, policeman, each carrying their own hopes, fears and secrets. And soon, each would be drawn into a tragedy that began quietly, like a whisper, and ended in a grave behind a temple. Sevalur, a town that moves at its own rhythm. Nestled between rolling fields and low hills, it is a place where temple bells mark the hours and gossip travels faster than the evening train. The ancient temple of Sri Narayan perched atop the hill watches over the town like a silent sentinel. Below it, a single main road lined with banyan trees leads to the market, the bus stand, and Sunshine Academy, the school where nearly every family sends a child. In Sevalur, everyone knows everyone. A stranger's footsteps echo louder than they would elsewhere. When Meera Reddy arrived here 3 years ago, a young bride and a newly appointed guest lecturer, she seemed to belong instantly. Her sari matched the colors of the morning sky. Her quiet smile reassured nervous parents. By day she handled the boisterous classrooms of Sunshine Academy. By evening she held private coaching sessions at a small rented hall, helping weaker students catch up. She often left at dusk on her faded blue scooter, winding through narrow lanes toward her modest apartment. Her routine was so steady that neighbors could set their watches by it. Among the many students who came to those evening classes was a boy named Rohan Das. Sharp, ambitious, the kind of student who sat in the front row and asked too many questions. At first, Meera was proud of his hunger for learning. She lent him books, stayed a few minutes after class to explain a tricky formula. But as the months passed, something shifted. His messages came later at night. His questions grew personal. Not about science or history, but about her life, her marriage, her dreams. The polite distance of teacher and pupil began to erode. Colleagues at Sunshine Academy began to notice his intense gaze whenever she passed. A neighbor once saw him waiting near her lane after coaching class. There were whispers, half-heard jokes in the staff room. But Meera, cautious and mindful of her reputation, brushed it all aside. She was careful, yes, but she also believed in giving her students the benefit of the doubt. In a town like Sevalur, appearances mattered, and scandal could destroy a career overnight. And so life went on in Sevalur. The temple bells rang, the school gates clanged, and Veera continued to teach, unaware that the quiet routine she had built, the bike rides, the evening classes, the patient guidance of an eager student, had already set in motion the tragedy that would shake the town to its core. It was the evening of 15th January. The winter sun dipped behind the Sevalur hills as Meera Reddy closed her classroom door. She gathered her books, straightened a stack of notebooks, and wheeled her blue scooter out of the school compound. A ritual she had repeated 100 times before. Neighbors remember the faint scent of jasmine in her hair as she passed. A mother at the corner tea shop saw her turn into the narrow lane toward her apartment. That was the last familiar glimpse anyone would have of her alive. The next morning, 16th January, Sunshine Academy opened its gates to chatter and footsteps. But Meera's classroom stood silent. Her chalk lay untouched, her attendance register blank. Students waited, puzzled. Colleagues tried her phone, no answer. Her husband Arjun, miles away in another city, called again and again, his messages left unread. Hours became a day. By 17th January, unease hardened into alarm. Meera's father, Venkatesh, arrived from his village after her line remained dead for 2 nights. He went straight to the Sevalur police station and lodged a missing person report with Inspector Samir Khan. The words, missing person, seemed too small for the dread in his chest. Search parties fanned out across town. Friends, neighbors, Local volunteers walked the paths she took daily. Posters were drafted. Calls made to hospitals, roadside eateries, bus stands. Mira's phone remained switched off, a dead beacon. And then, a clue? Grainy CCTV from a shop near the base of the temple hill showed her scooter passing by late on the night she vanished, but no footage of it coming back down. The temple bells still rang over Sevalur, but now their sound carried unease. A respected teacher had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a child, a worried husband, and a trail that ended at the foot of an ancient hill. It was 19th January. 3 long days had passed since Veera vanished. 3 nights of unanswered calls and silent prayers. On that cold morning, a villager named Ramu was cutting across a footpath behind the ancient Sri Nayan temple, a shortcut locals used to reach the fields. He paused, sniffing the air. A strange, metallic smell drifted from a thicket near the stone steps, the kind of smell that makes the hair rise on your arms. Curious and unsettled, he pushed through the shrubs. The earth under one of the bushes looked freshly disturbed, as though something had been hastily buried. Bits of fabric peeked through the soil. Heart pounding, Ramu stumbled back and ran down the hill to the nearest police outpost. Within minutes, Inspector Savir Khan and his team were climbing the temple path, their boots crunching on gravel. They cordoned off the area, spades in hand. The villagers gathered at a distance, whispering prayers. Slowly, layer by layer, the soil was lifted. And there she was, Meera Reddy, lying as though she had simply fallen asleep, but the bruises around her neck told a darker story. Beside her were fragments of her blue sari, her handbag, the small silver anklet her child loved to tug at. The post-mortem would later confirm what the inspector already suspected: death by strangulation. Injuries consistent with a struggle. Forensic samples taken, as investigators also considered the possibility of sexual assault. The quiet hilltop temple, a place of meditation and faith, had become the site of a crime scene. News traveled fast in Sevalur. Within hours the lanes buzzed with disbelief and grief. A trusted teacher, a young mother, gone. People who had once nodded politely at her in the market now clutched their children closer, whispering about the danger lurking among them. And somewhere in that same town, the person who had ended her life was still walking free. The quiet town of Sevalur that once echoed with temple bells and school children's laughter now trembles with suspicion. The discovery of Meera's body behind the yoga temple has shattered its calm. In the days that follow, Inspector Khan steps into a storm of grief, rage, and unanswered questions. He arrives at the hilltop scene at first light. Red and blue police ribbons cordon off the bush where Meera's body lay hidden. Forensics dust for prints while volunteers watch in stunned silence. Khan's eyes are sharp. He has worked cases before. But something about this one, the betrayal of trust, the setting near a sacred space, makes it heavier. The first lead comes quickly. Meera's call records. Her final call, made minutes before she disappeared, was to Rohan. The 19-year-old had been one of her brightest students. His name is suddenly everywhere. In murmured rumors at tea stalls, whispered prayers at the temple, and in Inspector Khan's notebook. Rohan, when questioned, looks nervous but defiant. It was just about tuition, he claims, eyes darting between officers. I didn't see her that night. But the phone logs tell a different story. A series of late-night calls, text messages, and unanswered rings. Meanwhile, Mira's family is breaking under the weight of their loss. Her father, who filed the missing person report, demands swift action. Her husband sits silent, face hollow, as local women's groups gather outside the station demanding justice for a teacher who gave so much to the town's children. Inspector Khan widens his net. He orders CCTV footage from every shop and corner near the Temple Hill. One clip catches Mira's scooter climbing the hill around 9:30 p.m. But no footage shows her coming back down. Another grainy clip, hours later, shows a figure resembling Rohan walking near the same path. There are gaps, unexplained blanks between frames. Forensic teams comb through Mira's house. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. Her handbag is untouched. Everything points to someone she trusted enough to meet privately. Someone she did not expect danger from. Khan visits the school. Colleagues share quiet warnings they had noticed. Rohan's intense attention, his lingering after class, the late-night calls. Yet no one ever thought it would come to this. As the town's grief deepens into outrage, Inspector Khan knows he has only a thin thread to follow. The boy who denies everything but whose shadow lingers over every clue. The investigation has only just begun. With the initial shock giving way to dogged inquiry, Inspector Khan begins to untangle the threads of Mira's final days. What emerges is not a single event but a slow build-up of tension. Small signals ignored, warnings left unheard. At the school, Mira's colleagues open up. They recall Rohan lingering after tuition, his eyes following Veera in a way that felt less like admiration and more like possession. They reveal text messages, overly affectionate, at times insistent, that Mira had confided about. I told him to keep his distance, one teacher recalls Veera saying, but he doesn't stop. 3 days before her disappearance, a small storm had already brewed. A shopkeeper near the coaching center remembers overhearing raised voices. Mira's firm, Rohan's pleading. Witnesses later confirm it was an argument about her refusing his advances. Mira had been clear. She was married. She wanted no more than a teacher-student relationship. Social media fills in the rest. Posts and private messages show Rohan increasingly bitter. Friends had seen him type out angry statuses, cryptic notes about betrayal, about someone choosing another life over me. There were hints of a plan Veera had been quietly making. She and her husband were preparing to move to another town at the end of the school term. For Rohan, whose infatuation had blurred into obsession, this meant final loss. Khan's team cross-checks Rohan's alibi. He claims he was asleep at his uncle's home on 15th January. But the uncle can't confirm it. He was out himself. And the phone records tell another story. Rohan's device pinged from a cell tower just below the Temple Hill, within 500 meters of where Mira's body was found. At nearly the same hour Mira vanished. The picture forming in Khan's mind is grim. A young man's obsession, fed in silence. A teacher's attempts to maintain boundaries. A confrontation near the Temple Hill that might have turned violent. But Khan also knows a motive alone isn't proof. He needs the missing links, How did Meera get off her scooter? Was she lured, threatened, or ambushed? And who else might have known? Each clue feels like a breadcrumb leading deeper into the forest. Messages, arguments, cell towers, the shadow of a boy caught between youth and rage. The town waits breathlessly as Inspector Khan inches closer to the truth. By the fourth day, the case had reached a tipping point. Inspector Khan now had a chain of circumstantial evidence that, while not yet the final nail, formed a circle too tight to ignore. The last call from Rohan, his phone ping near the Temple Hill, the late-night argument witnesses, and the grainy footage of a figure like him walking back alone from the path where Meera's body lay buried. On the evening of 21st January, Khan makes his move. Two plainclothes officers approach Rohan outside a small tea stall. He looks startled but calm as they tell him he's needed for further questioning. In the station, the walls hum with tension. Rohan sits across from Khan, hands clasped, eyes darting from floor to ceiling. At first his answers are rehearsed, clipped. We only spoke about tuition. I never saw her that night. But Khan pushes gently, then firmly, laying each piece of evidence on the table like cards. The messages, the CCTV, the phone pings. Hours pass. The tea goes cold. Rohan's voice starts to crack, then fades. Finally, sometime after midnight, he exhales a long, shaking breath. The rehearsed answers stop. He tells a different story. A confrontation on the hill. A desperate plea for Meera to stay in Sevalur. Her refusal. His anger turned to hands around her throat before he could think. He says the burial behind the temple wasn't planned. Only panic. He thought the earth and silence would buy him time. Make the truth vanish like footsteps in the dust. But the truth has a way of surfacing, just like Meera's body did. Khan listens without expression, his pen scratching notes. Around them, the station is quiet except for the faint buzz of the ceiling fan. By dawn, the formal arrest papers are ready. A bright student turned suspect now sits in handcuffs, and Sevalur's greatest secret begins to unravel. The news of Rohan's arrest spreads faster than the morning bell at Sunshine Academy. Sevalur, once a sleepy town of temples and banyan trees, is now a place where every street corner hums with whispers and every parent holds their child a little closer. Meera's family is shattered. Her father Venkatesh walks from one office to another clutching her photograph, demanding a swift trial. Her mother sits in silence, the weight of unanswered questions pressing her into the chair. Arjun Reddy returns from the city, cradling their small child, the life they were building together now torn apart. Across town, Rohan's family shuts their doors. Neighbors avoid eye contact. His parents, once proud of their brilliant son, are seen only at the courthouse, faces drained of color. Later, they issue a statement of remorse, but it sounds thin against the enormity of what's happened. The legal machine lurches into motion. Remand hearings, formal murder charges, the specter of sexual assault investigation. Lawyers argue over evidence, while outside the court, activists demand stronger protections for women and clearer boundaries between teachers and pupils. Sunshine Academy faces its own reckoning. How did a teacher become so vulnerable under its roof? Did no one see the warning signs? Television wangs line the narrow lanes of Sevalur. Anchors speak of broken trust and a small town's dark lesson. Parents pull their children out of extra classes. Students glance nervously at their phones, deleting old messages, wondering who to trust. As the town's grief and above the town, on the hill where the temple bells still ring, a patch of fresh earth marks the spot where Veera's life ended. A silent witness to grief, shame, and the fragile line between admiration and obsession. Sevalur will heal, perhaps, but it will never be the same. Behind every classroom, behind every desk and smile, run hidden currents of human emotion, admiration, longing, resentment, obsession. In Sevalur, those currents went unseen until they cracked open into tragedy, and a young woman's life was stolen. We are left with questions. What could have prevented this? How can schools, families, and communities guard trust more fiercely? How do we notice the warning signs before admiration becomes possession, before respect turns to rage? If this story moved you, share it. Let it start a conversation. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for Unraveling Crimes. Because each story we tell holds a lesson, and your awareness, your voice, can be the first step to change.